So, Shalina, King's Cross, one-time red light district and now a spanking new modern development. I guess I've always wondered what this place must have been like in the 19th century.
Oh yeah, if we think about our senses, it would have smelt different, it would have sounded different.
Burning coal.
Yeah, it would have looked very different. We would have seen maybe factory workers from children to, to other people feeling very hungry probably after a really long day of labour.
So this smelt of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
This is where stuff came through, the interchange of road, rail and canal.
Yeah, absolutely. So canals were incredibly important, particularly when we think about the links to the empire, for example. We've got goods coming from all over the world there. Some of them are going to eventually end up here.
And this is also the sort of source of British prosperity and trade.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've got a really interesting period of time to juxtapose with what is here now.
And a slightly, maybe a darker side as we think about the British Empire as well.
Yeah, there's always a dark side, isn't there? So I think we would have, if we were imagining this in the 1860s potentially, then we've got to go back a few years to 1857. And when I say 1857, you think of...
Well, the mutiny or the First War of Independence, pick your term.
Absolutely, and we've got the start of the British Raj, we've got the dissolvement of the East India Company at that point, then we've got a 90-year fight for independence.
And I think this is where they kept the horses. So should we go and have a look?
Let's do it.
So, this is an actual goods shed from the 1860s in London where we are. But when we think about building a restaurant, designing a restaurant, we always think about a story. And in our minds, we think of this as a goods shed from Mumbai in the 1860s, or built in the 1860s. And we think of a young man, maybe in the 1920s, coming in, a young Irani, who sees all the paraphernalia of the revolution, Industrial Revolution. So men, machine, commerce, and he decides that there's an opportunity here. So he sort of starts a chai stall and sells chai. And he then bribes the guards, sets up some tables, bribes them some more after a few years and sets up a kitchen, and eventually by 1947 he takes over the whole place. And so obviously the predominant events of 1928 to 1947 are the events of Indian independence, which is a story that we tell on the narrative, all the walls over here and all the other design details. So these are actual posters that we found in archive, original posters that we've now reproduced. There's two. One is a Swadeshi poster, and this is commemorating or inviting you to a clothes burning, which was in commemoration of the death of Lokmanya Tilak, an independence leader who died in August 1920. And this is the first anniversary of his birth, and it's being led by Mahatma Gandhi. And special arrangement for ladies and children. Maybe, Shalina, you can tell us a bit about the context of these posters.
So these represent a really, really important aspect of the Indian independence movement. So the Swadeshi movement was born in 1905, and it's kind of an ironic birth. So the British decided to partition Bengal. It was too big of an area. There's too much political activity.
So divide and rule.
Classic divide and rule. But of course, it had the effect of actually revitalising the nationalist movement. So the Swadeshi movement started, and it was really, really simple. They just told the people to go out there and boycott Lancashire cotton.
And what does Swadeshi mean?
So Swadeshi is boycotting. So so they opted for Lancashire cotton in particular because it was a good that the British were flooding the Indian market with, and it was something that everyone can do. We can see that from the posters. Ladies and children,
special arrangements
are present.
Absolutely,
yeah. And it's interesting because in 1905 that Swadeshi movement, it worked because a few years later, Bengal was put back together again essentially. So that inspired people like Gandhi to take this kind of protest method on, and we can see that through these incredible posters that you've got as we enter King's Cross. And
this cotton would have come from here. It might have been coming through this goods shed.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of there's the journey that this cotton that's ending up on this bonfire.
And then this cotton may even have come from India, come to Britain, gone up to Lancashire through somewhere like this goods shed, and then come back through as clothes back to India as well. So it was real mercantilism, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this really represents such an important aspect of the Indian independence movement, and is a method that continued from the early 1900s all the way through till independence in 47.
And presumably the police would have been pretty upset about these Lancashire clothes being
Oh,
burnt.
absolutely. I think and I think that's why they specifically burnt the foreign cloth as well. It wasn't just about boycotting them, it was the symbolism of burning that Lancashire cotton to show how incensed people were, which makes sense. It's 1921, we're a couple of years out from the Amritsar massacre, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, which had such a huge impact on the nationalist movement.